is a big deal. I think so.
I think it slipped.
Yeah, speaking of big deals, Joe Burrow is back. A report on his rehab from wrist surgery coming up.
Speaking of the NBA, Kevo, concern about its officiating after the final minute of Pacers-Knicks, and why is the answer yes? Well, we're going to start with the other Eastern Conference semi, and I'm talking about the semifinals between the Cavaliers and the Celtics. It starts tonight in Boston, and according to ESPN Bet, the Celtics are minus 3,000 to win the series. It's the shortest odds for any team to win a series in the conference semis or later since the Warriors back in 2017 en route to the finals. And the Cavs, well, they've lost 7 straight road playoff games dating to 2018, their second longest losing streak in franchise postseason history. Cleveland lost all 3 road games by nearly 23 points in their first round series with Orlando. Let's talk about Donovan Mitchell, who's going to be key to snapping that streak tonight. Spida averaging almost 30 points per game in 16 career games against the Celtics. That includes the playoffs. It's the 3rd highest average by any player against the Celtics all time. The only others that have fared better, Michael Jordan and Luka Doncic. I've heard of them. And this guy, too, our NBA reporter, Tim Bontemps, he's a friend of the show, and he joins us live on the scene at TD Garden. And, Tim, big storyline in this series, the injury status of the big men on both sides. What can you share with us about both of them? And start with Kristaps Porzingis.
So yeah, Kristaps Porzingis, the starting center for the Boston Celtics, suffered a calf strain in Game 4 of Boston's first-round series victory over the Miami Heat. Joe Mazzulla was asked before tonight's game about Porzingis' status, said he had no idea that Porzingis would be on the court during this series. However, I think Porzingis told everybody what the actual probability of him playing is when he said on Sunday he's looking at this as a week-to-week return as opposed to a day-to-day return. Since the series is only going for a couple of weeks, safe to assume it's unlikely we're going to see Porzingis play in this Eastern Conference semifinal. Now, as for Jared Allen, he missed the final 3 games of Cleveland's first-round series victory over the Orlando Magic with a bruised rib he suffered when he got elbowed in that series. Now, J.B. Bickerstaff gave the same message he did tonight before Game 1 as he did before each of the last 3 games, saying we'll see. As far as Allen's status, he remains questionable. It is a game-time decision for tonight's game. And Al, you mentioned the odds against Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell, though, said he's happy about where his team is at. He said to beat the best, you have to go through the best. Certainly the Celtics have been the best team in the league this season. We'll see if Cleveland can get out into an early lead in this series with a win tonight in Game 1.
Hey, early lead might not matter because in their last game, Cleveland overcame a 22-point fourth-quarter deficit in what shall forever be known as the Dean Wade game. Well, we'll ask you about that years from now. Where were you when Dean Wade? I'm just kidding. Meanwhile, Tim, speaking of where you were, yeah, you were there. See, exactly. So you were also yesterday at Madison Square Garden. You're doing the whole Northeast circuit for Game 1 of Pacers-Knicks, and a couple of controversial calls went the Knicks' way. We're showing them right now as the NBA's last 2-minute report just confirmed there was some incorrect calls. Now, here's what the league said. Well, they said that the Dante DiVincenzo should have been called for an offensive foul with 53 seconds left, and that Aaron Nesmith should not have been called for a kicked ball just moments later. But refs correctly called Miles Turner for a moving screen with 12 seconds left, and Indiana down 1. It kind of harkened back to the national semis with the women's basketball and Aaliyah Edwards. It was a moving screen if you don't think that they should call it there or not. But what's been the reaction around the league to what transpired in that final minute?
Well, El, the only reaction to officiating throughout the playoffs so far is that the only consistent thing about it is that it's been inconsistent. And that goes for replay center reviews, where frankly at this point people have no idea what the review answer is going to come back on. There was a call last night on Jalen Brunson that everyone on press row was sure was going to go against the Knicks in terms of the challenge, and Tom Thibodeau won it, and it was overturned. You go back to the Lakers-Nuggets series, there was a play where Michael Porter Jr. hit D'Angelo Russell in the head, and it was called marginal contact to the head, which is not something you ever see. And we've seen in the last 3 games at Madison Square Garden, games 2 and 5 in the Sixers-Knicks series, and obviously in Game 1 last night, there have been multiple errors in the final 2 minutes of the game by the officials that played a direct impact on the outcome of those games, which certainly is not something the NBA wants there to be talked about, in particular in the same city where Olympic Tower sits, where Adam Silver is watching these games. So certainly this is going to be a dominant storyline to watch moving forward, Al, and we will see if we're not talking about the last 2-minute report going forward here over the next couple weeks.
That's always the goal, right? We get that it's a thankless job. We shouldn't be talking about you at all, and instead talking about what a fantastic first game that was and what a great series it's shaping up to be. Tim Bontemps with the latest from Boston. Speaking of Jalen Brunson, Kevin, on Monday night, he became the first player in NBA history with 40 points and 5 assists in 4 straight postseason games. breaking a tie with Jerry West, MJ, and bubble version of Jamal Murray. His 43 points, also the most in Game 1 of the series in Knicks postseason history.
You mentioned the officials. That was the talk there, specifically with the Knicks game. How about the officials in this Nuggets game last night? The frustrations boiling over in another loss at home to the Timberwolves. Jamal Murray tossing a heating pad onto the floor in the second quarter. The officials missed it, but after the game, the crew chief, Mark Davis, said Murray should have received a technical. For much more, Mike and Frank in our PTI bonus topic.
All right, Frank, how big a deal is Jamal Murray throwing that object onto the court?
Yeah, it's a big deal, and this is an easy one. He should have been thrown out of the game. I think he should be suspended for Game 3. And if you don't think freak accidents happen in the NBA, Minnesota's last game of the first round against Phoenix, Mike Conley ran into head coach Chris Finch, and he had to have knee surgery because he suffered a ruptured patella tendon. So freak accidents happen. You're throwing a heating pad onto the court while play is going on. Someone could get seriously hurt. And it's not like Jamal Murray is 15 years old. He's been in the league for a while. He knows that you're not allowed to do that. He knows you could get in trouble. I think he maybe wanted to get thrown out of last night's game. He ended up going 3 for 18. We know he's not 100%. What he did there, and that's a classy player, is completely unacceptable. And I don't think he will get suspended, but if I'm the league, something like that, I'm sending a strong message. He's out for Game 3.
Yeah, Frank, I'm pretty much with you. And I was persuaded, all day earlier in the day by Tim Legler and Jay Will, guys who played the game for a long time, and they know what can happen on a court. If you slip on something like that heating pad device, if it's thrown on the court, you can step on it. Whether it was one of his teammates, an opponent, it doesn't matter. But let me go back for a second to Jamal Murray, who is one of the good guys. He's somebody that I think people who get to know him thoroughly enjoy across the board. He is never involved in anything silly. He just isn't. He seems to be the adult in the room all the time, except in this case. This was dangerous. You can't have it. There probably is a suspension. When you talk about player safety and the league pays lip service to player safety, not suspending him would show it's just lip service. Frank, I don't think they'll do it. I heard Richard Jefferson say later in the day it'll probably be a huge fine and a reprimand, and he's probably right about that. There probably ought to be a suspension, but the league also, knowing that its champion is down 2-0 and going to Minnesota, where they have no clue as to how to deal with the Timberwolves. If you don't have Jamal Murray, the second best player on that team, you're more than just done. You can just forfeit the rest of the series, and they don't want to get involved in that. I don't think the league office has the stomach for it, even though that's what probably ought to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Denver's got big problems. Number one, Anthony Edwards. He's been dominant thus far. That's it. We're done. Back to you.
But not done, gentlemen.